First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and Ustad Khalil Tetli for inviting me to this gathering. It was mutually, I think, beneficial for all, and I personally learned a lot. That some of the presentations and discussion we had here, they contributed very constructive input to my own knowledge. I will also share the experience of Tajikistan, with you, particularly the approaches and the experience that they've had with realization of the community development approach. You all know that Tajikistan was part of the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Tajikistan got independence. This is how it is, everybody knows that we got independence, but in reality, Tajikistan was left with nothing. Tajikistan was the poorest republic within the Soviet Union, and most of this territory, the mountain regions, were the poorest within Tajikistan. So as an independent Tajikistan, it didn't have government. All these services that were supplied from the other republics of the Soviet Union, particularly from Russia, were cut. And most of the functions that any government would perform were dysfunctional. That led to a civil war in Tajikistan, and which resulted in a status, in a condition where warlords were ruling the country, and almost each village was independent by itself and was not obeying the rules of the country. So in that situation, the Tajik government, which was just formed in this capital city, they were thinking on how to address these issues. And of course, they also applied for support to the UN agencies and international organizations. And one of the first international agency that responded to that support was Aga Khan Foundation. And in 1993, based on the cooperation agreement with the government, Aga Khan Foundation established a Pamir Relief Development Program. Why it was Relief Development Program? Because the Pamir area, which is known as Gorno-Badakhshan Autonomous Oblast, was totally isolated. It is an area that is bordering with Afghanistan, China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. And as all these other republics of Soviet Union got independence, they closed their borders. Afghanistan was occupied by Taliban, so it was closed anyway, and China didn't have any road connection with Tajikistan. And in that situation, it was very important to immediately organize relief program, provide food to people, because as you know, in Tajikistan, as a former Soviet republic, there was no private sector, there was no civil society sector, and everything was produced by state and everything was supplied from Russia and other republics of Soviet Union. And because of that, people there didn't have food. People even didn't have experience to produce their food. Land was government property, and there was no experience of doing farming. So in that situation, it was important to immediately organize food supply, but at the same time work with people to think about agriculture production and also institutional development. Although the central government was existing, but didn't have any resources and was very weak, and didn't have any, let's say, buy-in from the local people. It was trying, to establish a system, that would meet a standard government functions. But, and that was the priority. But there was a big gap at the village level, at the sub-district level, at the district level. And that's why it was very important to start establishing institutions that would replace the Soviet institutions. And in Soviet times, there were collective farms, there were state farms, and all those were dismantled, and all those were dysfunctional, and they were not relevant also. Because you know that in Soviet time, everything was centralized, and the economy was basically managed by the government. because of that, that system was no more relevant, because it was a transition to a market economy. It was a transition actually to chaos. So what AKF did, it started, working with the government structures to establish something at the villages level, because this is what would help us, to identify priorities at the villages level and to meet the immediate needs. And of course, there were a lot of ideas, a lot of analysis, but part of Aga Khan Foundation, Aga Khan Rural Support Program in Pakistan already had an experience in that, and the decision was to replicate that model to Tajikistan. And that was the time when Ustad Khalil Tetli joined the Pamir Relief Development Program in that time, which was already being renamed into Mountain Societies Development Program, Support Program. And he started this village organization program. Why was that important? Because the relief program, it was like emergency program. Buy food, bring and distribute to people. But then we needed to shift to development program. And the development program, the most important part of any development program, it is inclusiveness. It is participation of people in addressing their own problems. And it's helping them to master the approaches, the processes, the tools to address their problems. And that is why there was a belief that village organization program will help to do that. And it proved to be relevant there. Although MSDP, the Mountain Society Development Program, as a rural development program, evolved several times from being a relief program, being development program, being direct service provider, then facilitator, and then we have our solution plans. But the community-driven development and the village organization platform still remains relevant. One value that we added to the village organization approach that we replicated from Pakistan, we made it structured. Why? Because we wanted it to go to scale. And to make it scalable, it was very important to make it really structured and develop tools that will be used everywhere we go to replicate the model. And there are 6 stages, and they were in all the presentations, people were talking about the stages. But what was important in this process, and we called it village development planning process, is to give people a chance, to participate in planning their own development process, in planning for the improvement of their own life. And the stages from 4 to 6, where the villagers come together and then they develop their village management plan, then they implement it over 3 years, and each year review their plans, and then again they, after 3 years, they assess or review the implementation of their plans and then replan. So that started going as a cycle. The first cycle, MSDP was with these people and was leading them. The second cycle, it was like a transaction type of approach where MSDP was there, but mainly the villages were leading. And the third cycle, it is a transformative cycle where the villages take over and they continue. And this cycle is now continuing on its own by the villagers. And as I said, the whole process gave opportunity to people to be heard, to contribute, and to participate in the development process. In 1998, when Ustad Khalil and we started the process, already in that time we thought about developing a mechanism that would in future help the government to take over the process.